Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our today's webinar, Smart Transition from Legacy Oracle Forms to SOA, Mobile and the Cloud. To some of you I would like to say good morning due to the time difference. To others, like from Austria, hello, nice to meet you there, and have a good afternoon. And to some of you from Oman, good evening. It's a pleasure to have you with us. So before we start, I would like to make you feel more comfortable with the tool we're using. Therefore, you can see on the right side there's a toolbar, and that's the only way you can get in contact with us, which means during this webinar you're in listen-only mode, and we can only hear or read or see you when you use the chat functionality, which is on the right side, or if you use the button raise your hands. During the time I speak to you or moderate this webinar, my colleague Daniel will take a look at the chat box, and if it's his turn, then it's my turn to take a look on the chat box. Please let us know if you see the screen clearly or you hear us clearly, and if there's anything like you won't see us, you can't hear us, or something's frozen, which might happen also, please leave a note in the chat functionality box. So, your speakers. This is, of course, my colleague Daniel. He's consultant at PITSS in Germany since August 2012, and he's very familiar with Oracle Forms, Oracle ADF, and Mobile. And my name is Doreen. I'm Manager of Customer Service, and I'm with PITSS since May 2011. I'm responsible for customer service, trainings, and events. I will moderate around Daniel's technical part, and he will introduce you towards a legal transition to SOA, Mobile and Cloud. But before we start with the very nice technical part, it is my part to show you a little bit or telling you a little bit about PITSS, which only takes a couple of minutes to make you feel familiar with our company. So it's pretty easy. We've got 4 locations, 2 in Germany, south and north of Germany, with the headquarters in the south. Then we've got a pretty new baby from UK. It's Twickenham, London. We're very happy to have these new colleagues. And of course, my lovely colleagues from the USA in Troy, Michigan. And since 1999, we are founded. And for more than 60 years, we are on this Oracle technology market, and we develop quite a lot. That's why we already got about 80 colleagues now from all over the world, which are very competent, very highly experienced employees towards Forms, ADF, and Apex. And you will definitely see it when it's Daniel's turn. We've got about over 500 customers, which means, of course, again, all over the world, from Sri Lanka to Oman to Denmark, Austria, USA, Mexico, all over, with very different parts how they handle, for example, PITSS.CON as a migration tool, modernization tool for maintaining their applications, or for just having an analyze about where to go and status quo analyze. I will come back to this part later after Daniel. We are 100% an Oracle Gold partner, and we are highly specialized for Oracle technologies. We are very close, and even PITSS.CON based on Oracle technologies. And as I mentioned sometimes ago, there is one tool for high-performance Oracle applications. Some of you in the audience already know PITSS.CON. They got it for migration, modernization, and for maintenance. Thank you very much that you bought it and you're still with it. It's a very good tool, and we are lucky to have you here as a customer. So we are focused on quite a lot of things. Please give me a second to explain. For more than 22 years, we've got Forms experience, which means some of my colleagues really know how Forms 2.0 really looked like and worked with it, or Forms 3, and of course, a lot of you know 6 and the latest one, till version 12c. We've got experience in over 13 years of SOA. SOA is a very deep, high level, but very complicated word for something to express so differently, which means we've got a profound knowledge about web services, OA, as well as business process management, and everything you specific will understand under SOA, which is quite a huge amount. About more than 8 years, I guess. We are very firm with ADF technology, Oracle ADF, which means that we successfully manage and migrate ADF projects all over the world. And we are very proud to tell you that, especially in Germany, we are the one and only who have had and bring to an end very successful ADF projects who work very well, and we're quite working on some clustering, and especially Daniel is now very firm with ADF, so I'm very lucky that he's with us. For more than 4 years, we could call it new shoes. We are able to do huge projects with handhelds and scanners for companies like Volkswagen. And it's a pretty new stuff for us, and with this webinar we're going to push things forward. And of course I would like to give you a short overview of our customers from very different areas, like all over the world, like Honeywell, NASA, DTE Energy, Borsat, Air Liquide, Jana Shakti Insurances, and other insurances from Germany or other parts of the world. So thank you so much for every customer who's now with us, and for every future customer. We will be happy to serve you. Nevertheless, I still come to an end, and I would like to prepare or give Daniel the time to prepare his stuff, his PowerPoint sheets and his virtual machine. And while he's doing it, we would like to start with another thing for you. Please be so kind and take part of this very short poll. I just have to start it. So please be so nice and take part of it, which means now with this webinar you're getting in contact with the migration from Oracle Forms to SOA, mobile or cloud. And when will you start your project? Do you think it is more during the next 6 months, 12 months, or not focused on it at all? Just that you take these webinar as, let me say, information, or you're really precise in your planning and say, okay, I know I need SOA, I need this architectural structure. I'm pretty sure my way will be to a mobile application, or I'm very firm with cloud. So during the next 6 months it will work, or maybe 12, or you don't really know. So I will still open it up for about 10-12 seconds, just to make you feel more comfortable. Just to give you a short feeling about what happened now during you press a button or choose one, it's more that about, let me say, 30% of you are thinking during the next 6 months they will get in contact or start their migration or transition. Let me take this word for you. And it's about 70% that are not really focused on by now. So I know you can take this webinar as a very informal stuff, just to get more information about it and see what we are able to do. And if you're already done with it and you've got specific questions, please use the chat functionality. And at the end of this webinar, we will be glad to answer as many of them as possible. And all these questions we could not answer at the end, please be sure we will do it by mail and send you the information needed. I guess you will also find this webinar on our YouTube channel. I will give you the contact details at the end of the webinar. So I just take a look at my colleague because it's sitting quite next to me. We share one room for this webinar, and just ask him if he's all right. Daniel, you happy with it? Okay. Then thank you so much for taking part of this poll. I'm going to close it. And I just move over and give Daniel all my stuff that he can start it. So I hear you later, and thank you so much for your attention.
All right, then I take over. Also, warm welcome to our webinar today for a smart transition to from Oracle Forms to SOA, mobile and the cloud. Let's have a look what we will do in this technical part that I will take over. First of all, I would like to tell you a little bit about SOA microservices and cloud, why you should consider using a web service-based or service-based approach, also if you're on forms, and a little bit the difference between those words that are currently, mostly anywhere in the IT. Then I will show you a little bit about PITSS.CON, how PITSS.CON works, a little bit about the PITSS.CON repository and how we can use PITSS.CON to clean Oracle Forms applications and get rid of dead code redundancies before we actually transfer business logic to different technologies. Then I would like to show you the extracting process from PITSS.CON, which is called user stories in PITSS.CON. So we are able to log processes from your users, so your users are able to monitor and record their user stories, their daily processes, and we can then identify the objects that are targeted in Oracle Forms. And based on this recording, we are then able to build a web service on top of the PL/SQL logic based on the database package that we created from this extraction. And at last, I would like to show you a short demo where I want to show you the recording process with PITSS.CON, how we inject the application, and where you can put a web service on top of this and call a mobile application based on this web service. But first, the first topic, SOA microservices and cloud. So why should you consider a service-oriented architecture? Well, the main able to open your application towards different other approaches. That means you can open your application for other enterprise applications that are based on or that need information from your Oracle Forms application. So you probably know that you're not able to communicate really from within Forms to other applications. And that's where a service-oriented approach with web services can help you to communicate between different applications. You're able to get a mobile and cloud enablement if you have the requirements to create or to have up your application on mobile devices. You're able to use these web services on your mobile devices. You're able to develop faster within a microservice concept if you use it to the full scale, and you're able to scale microservices much better than you can do that with monoliths. We'll see why in the next slide. So we see in this slide a little bit the differences between the different architectures. On the left side, you see the monolith, and that's basically Forms. Oracle Forms is a monolith. You have all your stuff like the UI or the validation logic for the UI and the business logic in your forms application within your forms modules. And you cannot reuse program units or objects from different other forms modules. And when you have a look at the client-server SOA architecture, then you see you get a reusability. You have different services that you are able to call. So you can call a service based from this application, or you can consume a web service from this application within another application and reuse existing services. And then you have the new buzzword microservices, where you have a complete service approach. That means that you have one service for a complete business process in one. So that means here, for example, we have a search functionality in the UI shell, and we have completely down to the complete stack, to the database, all logic, and all business processes in one microservice. And that gives us the possibility to easily scale heavily used business processes. So instead of copying a complete forms application over the cluster to scale the application, we are able to copy certain microservices that are heavily used. And it is a little bit a concept of microservices, to be able to scale heavily used microservices. So what is the differences between monoliths and microservices? We saw it in this picture, but also here in a little table that I found by Martin Fowler. You see this YouTube video here. He tells that monoliths are quite simple to a certain size. If you're a forms developer, you will notice probably. So maybe you started in the 90s, back in the 90s, with the development of certain requirements in Oracle Forms, and then more and more requirements came up, and you had to blow up your Oracle Forms applications. And that's what he states, that up to a certain size you have monoliths tend to be simple, but in reality I saw quite big forms applications that had that were really complex, and where the developers weren't able to keep it simple. So that's only certain to a certain size. Also, you are able to develop consistency or consistent in monoliths, because you're using the same technology. When it comes to Oracle Forms, you're based in PL/SQL, and it's consistent development. The next point is that monoliths are tend to be modularity in terms of refactoring. So you don't have to consider different technologies when you want to modularize forms module. You can copy objects from one module, forms module, to another. So refactoring is quite easy. Microservices are able to have a partial deployment. That's the big advantage when it comes to a comparison between monoliths and microservices, because when you have a monolith and you want to upgrade forms application, you have normally to upgrade the complete forms application. Microservices you can partial deploy. You can have microservices that are run in different technology bases. The big advantage of microservice is the availability. If one service goes down, then just this one service goes down. Martin Fowler compares it with the purchase microservice, maybe from Amazon. So it could be that the recommendation web service, microservice, goes down, but still you have like the purchase service that is still running, and you're able to do purchases. And also microservices help you to preserve modularity. So it's hard to get to get the microservices in modules, because we tend to open up services when we have different requirements, but it's very easy to preserve the modularity. Okay, then we come to the next point, the cleaning of Oracle Forms modules, and a little bit about PITSS.CON itself. So to explain the PITSS.CON repository, we use this graph normally, and you can see here that PITSS.CON is a repository-based application. We have a database in the middle where we store all the information about forms that are loaded into PITSS.CON, and that is done over the API layer of Oracle Forms. So we can put all the form files, ASCII files, database instances through a loading process, and within our repository we're then able to do analysis, documentation, quality, operation, and also upgrades and migrations. And when we talk about building a SOA architecture, then we are talking about re-engineering processes. That means we are loading Oracle Forms into our repository, and we identify business processes and then copy them or re-engineer them to be able to have SOA processes. And when we spool out our changes, we also normally, if we create new form modules, we use the API layer as well, and you get 100% Oracle Forms modules as well, because we are using the Oracle Form standard API layer. So how is PITSS.CON, the PITSS.CON process for doing a preparation? We have normally a preparation phase where we use PITSS.CON to get that code and redundancy out of your Oracle Forms modules. We call it the Forms preparation phase. So at the beginning, on the first dot, you see that we do normally a quality and analysis phase where we try to understand your code and get the scope correct. That helps us later for doing a code cleaning to remove unused objects and centralize redundant objects, which means putting redundant program units into one library or database package. And afterwards, we are then able to do business logic transfer to the database via our user stories. And that helps us to create an open architecture with web services. So here it's stated again, with our detailed analysis, we are able to reduce the manual effort of re-engineering the application, and we are able to reduce the application size and get rid of that code, which leads us to a faster and precise implementation phase of the web service itself. And due to having all the forms application and all the dependencies in PITSS.CON, we are able to have a quality structure and give you an insight of your application. And here it's stated, basically your form is a blueprint for microservices, because when you record your application processes, then you get kind of microservices from the top, from the UI down to the database. So why should you consider doing a code cleaning before working on your Oracle Forms application? Because you can save time and you can save money with that. That means in the recent projects we had, we were able to get off up to 20% out of the Forms application as that code. So we could remove this code easily with a static analysis with PITSS.CON. and we're able to reduce up to 10% of redundant objects. That means getting all those redundant program units into one library functionality, and remove unnecessary objects. Here it states for ADF, but also for different technologies. So that means we are able to save up to 45% in total for your redevelopment. So how is that code removal working? You see on the right side a picture from Oracle Forms that states or shows how that code is identified within PITSS.CON. We look at program units that are not called by triggers anymore, and then remove this easily by using the feature called the pool functionality in PITSS.CON. And that's like, it depends on how big your application is, but my experience is that we can remove this code in up to 5 to 15 minutes. So it's really fast to get off static that code. The same for redundant objects, how we can identify redundant objects. When it comes to redundancy, we have a look at your different form modules, and we compare all the program units that are existing in your forms application. On the right side, you can see we identify here a program unit that is called date chosen, and we have it as well in credits, as also in the payments FMB and the accounts FMB, and it's a 100% match. And then we can identify this and unite the code that is similar in Oracle Forms library, for example, or also stored in a database package. So after we've done this cleaning phase, normally we start to extract the business logic out of forms. How can we achieve that? We have normally a starting point. So we have to identify user stories. That means your users tell you what their main processes is, and we have identified these business cases. And when we identify these business cases, we can inject the forms application with a logging mechanism that will insert all the objects that are tackled into the PITSS repository, and we can later re-engineer those objects. Well, that means we can move after the recording of the user story, the dependent objects into the PITSS.CON pool and store it there. From there, we can generate the business logic in a cluster package, so-called cluster package, and the database, and change this Oracle Forms module that calls normally the program unit from the Oracle Forms module itself to call it from the database. And if we have updated the call within the Oracle Forms application, then we can change the call to the database and remove the unused program unit from Oracle Forms, because then it's that code and not used anymore. So how can we, or how is user stories working? Consider your application as this quarter, and it consists of small program units and small objects that make up this monolith with our user stories, and we're then able to hit it in all the objects, the database objects that are hit by this process. And when your users are able to say, okay, now I want to record my daily work, my daily process that I'm doing, then they can just click within their application on the record button and start the recording. And then you see all those little objects from your application will be recorded so that you get at the end a complete picture of the process and identify it as a user story and separate those user stories within PITSS.CON. So that's what you get from PITSS.CON. You get the objects that are tackled by each and every user story, which means business process. Okay. So after we have identified this process, we can create a new open architecture. That means, oh, come on. After this business logic extraction, we can generate a web service on top of the database package. We can put this into this, for example, the service bus. It's just an example where we can use the web service. You can use this web service as people process and the mediator, business process management as well. You can consume this web service from Forms itself if you really want to push it to a service-oriented architecture, but also in ADF, MAF, Apex.NET, HTML5 as well. But if you're not the PL/SQL, I'd say guy, if you're used to have your business logic, or if you want your business logic to be existing in Java, you can also convert it with PITSS.CON to Java. That's also possible, so you don't have to you can decide if you want to have your business logic in PL/SQL or in Java. Then we also have to adjust the code manually because this is to get an object-oriented standard if we want to do it in Java. Then we can update the web service that was based on PL/SQL as an ADF component and remove also the PL/SQL package. So that would be the process if we really say we want to have pure Java as our business process module. So I'm finished with the theoretically part of my presentation. So I will go into the live demo. You see here a little bit scenario that I've created for this webinar. I've created an Oracle Form server, which means a WebLogic server, where I have the orders FMB. I will show you how we can inject this orders FMB with our user stories so that we can record our business process. And then I will show you how this business process looks on the database, how it can be consumed by a web service, or how you can create a web service based on this package. And then hopefully my mobile app will work. So first things first, I jump into my virtual machine. And here I have this orders FMBs. You probably know it. It's just an FMB for customer information and order information, as the name states. And I want to inject this with our PITSS.CON user stories. So within PITSS.CON, I have here the user stories customer application injection functionality. If I click on play, I am able to select which objects I want to inject. Do I want to inject forms, libraries, the whole application, forms application? Also, database package could be implemented or used. But for the demo, I will just use one form module, and it's called orders. And PITSS.CON now will add in the repository all the necessary calls to a package that we've created and inject all triggers and program units with the logging mechanism. So you see 53 objects have been updated. So how does this look in the application? If we have a look at one trigger, for example, when window close trigger, then you see we have added a package call PCK record log story, and we log which object we are currently in and what's happening here. That has to be activated, and for that I've created a key F1 trigger to call our PITSS.CON form story, and then we are able to start this user stories. So I'm currently in the form. Let's assume I'm the user and I want to record my process of identifying a customer or getting customer information. So I have to press F1. Then we have the user stories board, I call it, and I can add a story. For example, get customer information. I can state here if I want to record the complete flow. That would mean that all the objects, even if they are tackled twice or 3 times, would be recorded. Or I can just say I don't want to have the complete flow. I'm just interested in the distinct objects. So for that I will say distinct objects. Okay, so we see that the user story is now running. And now all actions that I will perform will be recorded. So I get to my customer data, and I can just see that I get here the total information from the database, how much sales I have with this customer. I can leave this, and that's just a simple example, but it's enough for this demo. I can just say F1. We see that we have tackled 6 objects here, and we can save the story. And if we go back to PITSS.CON, we have here the possibility to manage or record user stories. And I can import my newly recorded user story. And then you see here which objects have been tackled. You see the when button pressed, the set customer ID, it's 2 or 3 program units that are tackled. You see the development time that is calculated from within PITSS.CON, how many statements, how complex those objects are. And I can see the details as well. And if I click here, I can really go one by one through the complete user process of Oracle Forms. I can also replay it and see in real time how my users work with this user story. But most importantly, I can save these objects, I already did it here, into a pool. I will just do it again. And you see all the triggers, all the blocks, and all the program units, so the business logic behind this, will be stored within this pool. And what I did with this information, if I click here on this source code from Forms, is it doesn't show me the code. I've created a package from the set customer objects. Those are the recorded programming units from our application. So you see that basically this is PL SQL and couldn't be stored in the database. And I've created here a package, this cluster package, cast body, and stored my business logic from the user story in the database. So once I have it in the database, I'm able to build a web service on top of it. And that's what I did in the JDeveloper. I've created a Java class or 2 Java classes, one customer Java, one customer Java information. customer Java is just a poser to store the information. And here you see I've created a package call in Java, call package customer set customer, where I get all the parameters, and I can now build a web service based on this Java class. And that's what you can do from within JDeveloper. It's kind of easy. You just have to create your Java class and do a right click, create RESTful service. And now you see here I've created a RESTful service that can be consumed by mobile devices, for example. And you will see that this is also working. So this is my web service here. I used the HTTP analyzer and used the WADL to get the operation get customer information get as a get HTTP get functionality. And I can enter here customer ID. And then you get the customer information on the right side. We can see that the customer usually orders large amounts. We can do this as the same for different IDs. So this is my web service. And now, I should have done that before, I have to start my mobile device. And then I'm able to deploy this as well on a mobile device. So I've created MAF application that consumes this web service. So we have here a task flow where we just have a start mask and a show mask. That means the same as we did here, we enter a format mask where we enter the ID, and we have a show mask where we can display the information. We could also have a HTTP put web service or endpoint where we could store new custom information from a mobile device. And I will now try to deploy this on my mobile device. You see here I have this emulator. And I just say Android to Android emulator. And then hopefully my app will be deployed on the mobile device. I tried it as well from my Android device and it worked as well. So hopefully this is working with the emulator as well. So now the app is packaged and will be stored on the device. You can see here that it creates the Android classes and will now sign the application. Yes, now. And there should be a new app here in this window in just a few seconds. Yeah, you see it here. It's created. We have the beautiful Oracle logo, and yeah, we can also enter our customer ID here. And our mobile application framework app should get the customer information. Yeah. So we have here also the customer information on our mobile device that was formerly based in our Oracle Forms application. And that can be done with each or most every process in your for Oracle Forms application. So that was my technical part that I took in this webinar, and I will now give the word back to my colleague Doreen. Thank you very much.
So can you hand me back the keys, or moderator? Oh, I can do it by myself. Okay, no, I get it. Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you very much, Daniel. I must admit, when I first read this title, Smart Transition from Legacy Oracle Forms to SOA, Mobile and Cloud, I thought, oh my god, to SOA, Mobile and Cloud. But then I saw your demo version and now it's pretty much clear. And actually, I guess I missed this trend about microservices. I heard it for the first time on this webinar, and then you explained a little bit before we start this webinar, because I was like, microservices, monolith, I don't get it. But now I'm really, I get it, I'm done with it. So just to make you feel a bit more comfortable is that you now see our homepage. And I'm just going to show you where you find some information if you would like to start, for example, with an analysis where you are, like status quo. Where am I before you start such a huge planning and amount of transition or migration. So this is the US homepage. You can find us under Solution, Analysis Services, and then Status Quo Analysis. Just if you need any further information, you can click on this homepage or ask my colleagues. And there you find some further information. For example, what is your situation here? If you ask yourself, can we leave everything the way it is, or we would like to migrate to something, but where do we stand? How long will it take? What do I have to keep in mind? Is my team skilled? What skills are there? What skills do I need? How long will it take? How much effort and money will it cost? Then your status quo analysis and all the following one will be the best to serve you. If you've got any questions concerning the analysis, please contact my colleagues or me, and I will just immediately let you know what will happen next there. So of course we will start with a Q&A answer, and I must admit, as far as I've seen here in our chat box, nobody really got a question so far. So I guess, Daniel, you did a pretty good job. Thank you so much. If you've got questions left, for example, you will get the presentation, or you will see this webinar on our YouTube channel. And if you would like to have the presentation, please drop an email, send me a note, use the chat functionality. And here are my colleagues' contact data. If you are located in the USA or Mexico or something around there, please use my colleague from PITSS America. You'll find the telephone number and, of course, the email address info@pitsamerica.com. If you're already in contact, you can use specific email addresses like from my colleague Jason or Kelly. And if you're more located to the UK, please get in contact with this sales number and sales.uk@pitts.com. Even though, feel free to contact my colleagues Sasha, David, and Yasser. They will definitely love to help you. If you are more located in the region about Germany, Switzerland, and Austria, feel free to contact, for example, me. You can get me or reach me under customer service at pitts.de or under this number displayed on the screen. Even though I've shown you for a couple of seconds, it was a very short, that under pitts.com you'll get all the information needed. After / you can put D or UK to get to the specific landing page of each country. And of course, as I already pointed out in this chat functionality, you can reach us or see more of our webinars, movies, and movies under youtube.com users, for example, PITSS America or PITSS GmbH. And there you'll find several other movies to watch, other stuff like ADF to get more deeper in it, SOA, Forms 12c migration, and so on. So this is definitely still your chance to get more information from us, just as my colleague Daniel, if there's any further thing. And thank you very much for paying attention, and please stay in contact with us. So we would love if you would like to follow us on Twitter for PITSS GmbH or PITSS America, or of course on LinkedIn with /company/PITSS -GmbH or PITSS America. And don't miss our next webinar, which will take place in September 21, how to migrate Oracle Forms to ADF, Apex, or any technology. It's part 3, the migration. We already had in January, I guess it was part 1, and part 2 something around March or April, which were the preparation phases, and so far we're going to get the real thing done, the real migration, not the dead code analysis or preparation, cleaning files, what Daniel already showed you. It's about the real migration. So I would say thank you so much for paying attention, watching us here, listen to us, and give us a chance to show you what we think that a transition from legacy Oracle Forms to SOA mobile and cloud is all about. And I hope to hear and see you soon. So from our side, thank you so much. Daniel, anything you would like to comment?